Hey y'all,
How's it going, everyone?
I'm Jay,
Now I'm Chris the Bird Nerd.
and we
We
are
are
the
the Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brain. By the way, the episode, I guess not from last week. We only did one episode the last 2 weeks each. The first one episode week, I think we were dead on again.
Yeah, I saw. I remember that. I was like, wow, that
Yeah,
we might have hit the winner on that one. Maybe
every
it
once in a
only
while.
it only took us 47 episodes, but that's okay.
This is
I don't know.
episode
We're
50.
we're we're mid late episode. Is this 50?
I believe this is number
Oh
50.
man, we should have done something like cooler than our topic we're gonna do now.
Now, this is an important one. It's topical. People are, we're trying to. It's hard to decide which topics to do when.
Yeah,
It was easier in the early days because we had some really basic ones. We're getting a little more nuanced now, and I think probably we should go revisit some of
yeah.
the early stuff we talked about.
I think that'd be good. And
Um,
let us know down in the comments. I know we get lots of comments throughout, just questions throughout, and we try to base a lot of our videos off of those comments and questions. But yeah, let us know down below if if there's a topic you'd like us to rehash with maybe a different angle and approach, etc. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
and we have a list that we work off of. So if you're thinking like, man, I told them 2 months ago, like I know, so Aladdin, Ohana Feathers, he asked for diamond firetails, diamond sparrows.
Yeah,
It's on the list. We're going to get to it. We're also trying, like right now, we're in fall, we're getting close to winter. So that's why these topics you're getting a lot of getting birds out of breeding condition was last episode. This is winter prep. That's why
yeah,
we're doing these now because it's applicable to now.
right.
Now it wouldn't be a good time now to do. What do you do for summer? That's a long way from now.
Or bringing your birds back into breeding condition, but you got to wait 6 months to do it. So
All right. Well, yeah, the Australians, we did do that
yeah,
episode. So if you're in Australia right now, go back and get that episode.
yeah.
But we're trying to get to all of it. We have no plans to stop making podcasts anytime soon. So we're going to get to all of it. We're going to come up with more stuff. I'm sure, who knows what else we'll come up with here in the future. But yeah, so I think we already said it, but today we're going to talk about winter prep. What do we do for winter?
Yeah.
The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains.
All right, before we do winter prep, again, getting really close to the Bird Brains box.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
our
we
sponsor
shared
is
a
New
lot of the
Zealand.
yeah, and we shared a lot of that in our last episode. If you guys watched that, really excited with the new Bird Brains box that's coming together. I feel like we're on the end stretch of getting the box going and different products and things that'll surround that box that you guys can choose from. Really excited for it. New Zealand has been awesome to work with us and really taking our opinions and wanting to get the best products in there for us to use for our birds with the goal in mind is the birds benefit from the Bird Brains box, right? That's what we're trying to do here. And they've done a great job working with us and doing the research and trying to bring the most value to everybody into your birds through this Bird Brains box.
Yeah, and I'll give New Zealand some credit. You never know when you start working with a new company and you're figuring each other out and everything that means. I have never once heard from them, oh, we're not going to do that. It won't make us money or anything. It's all just, is
Yeah,
this the right thing for finches? That's the only thing
yeah,
they ever ask us is,
yeah,
all right, you know, I can get this one, or this one. Which one's the right one? I never hear, hey, which one's going to make us the most money? Which one, which Brandon, if you're watching this, maybe you should think about that a little bit more. But he's got a business to run. But
right.
I never hear any of that. It's always what's the right item for the birds.
And as we go along, Jay, these next few months, we're slowly adding some of these products, and we're trying to do a wide variety, right? Everything nutritional, breeding, housing, care, food. I mean, we're trying to cover a broad area of needs for our birds. So if you guys throughout these next few months, if you're going on the website and looking, maybe there's a product or an item on there that you typically get for your birds, but you don't see on there. Let us know. Let us know if there's anything that we could try to add. We'll work with New Zealand and see if there's some items there that we can try and get on there, hopefully for a better price for you guys, etc. Try and make this one-stop shop area for all the birds' needs, whether it's finches or macaws and everything in
Mhm.
between.
And right now, today, use code BirdBrains, 10% off whether you have a big macaw or finches. There is stuff on there now. They're adding more. We're working towards a bunch more stuff, but there is stuff on there now. So hop
Yeah.
on there. If you're not using really high quality food, it's there. It's a very, very good price. Ships right to your door. We are making, 10% off. We're making it as easy for y'all as we possibly can.
Yes.
So, it helps us keep making these podcasts. We're not getting paid, but they're sponsoring us. We're getting seed. We're getting these items to review for you guys. So, it helps us keep going, helps us stay motivated, helps y'all take great care of your birds, which is what we're all here for. So, jump on there. That to help us, that needs to be where you go.
Yes, please. We much appreciate
Yeah.
it.
All right. Winter prep. Winter prep. So,
What
as as far as bird keeping goes, I'll start with this. Winter is my least favorite season
I
for
was just
outdoor
gonna
bird
say,
keeping.
I was gonna say winter prep. What's the first thing that comes to mind with winter prep? And I'm thinking darkness, birds that don't sing, lots of feathers on the ground, and they kind of get boring a little bit. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that
No
happens.
no baby birds, no nest building, no singing, no mating, no displays. Um, you tend to start to run into illness
Yes.
and things like that more because the first thing that happens to birds when they get cold is it exposes things because sick birds have a really hard time regulating their body temperature. And
Yes.
so if a bird that's been sick, but it's been 85, sometimes they're cruising. Well, you get down to 60, that bird might not be cruising.
Yep.
So this is the hardest time as far as keeping birds healthy, keeping them happy. And then you're also so focused on getting birds ready for next year, like we talked about last episode. I'm already aiming towards next breeding season, and I kind of view winter as I just got to get them through it.
Yeah. So Jay, when we talk about winter prep, what for you, what is the first thing that you do in whether it's the first step or the first thing you take care of with your birds in order to prepare them for the oncoming of winter?
So the thing, I guess, the first thing that comes to mind that I think about that's the big change for me is I put up plastic around the outside of the aviary, which I hate doing because I've got clear plastic, but it gets dirty, it gets tinted by the sun. So it basically I know I can't really without sticking my eyes right up to it, I
Yep.
can't look into the aviary like I can in the spring, summer, and fall. So, but if I don't do that, I can't heat the aviary. So I wrap the outside in plastic panels, the same ones I use for the roof. And then in my shed, I have the top vents they have a mesh on them, but they're open air. So I put plastic over those as well to enclose everything. And then I have a thermostat, two thermostats actually, and electric space heaters, not gas space heaters. You can
Yeah,
use a gas radiator, but you don't want to be
yeah. You
burning
put the fumes out
anything,
there.
right? No fumes allowed. So I use electric space heaters to heat the aviary. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, similar things. As a kid growing up, my dad had a big aviary in the backyard. The front was open with wire, and the two sides was open with wire, and then the back was covered up with plywood. And I vividly remember most winters, and lots of times my dad would put the plastic up while we were at school, and you come home, and then all of a sudden the aviary is covered up. And the same thing, like um, I always hated it because I couldn't see into the birds, right? Yeah, it's a light kind of clear plastic, but yeah, you really have to like put your eyes up to the plastic to even vaguely see through it, and things like that. And we tried to get a thicker plastic here just because we get really cold winters, and that would help. But um, so with my current setup that I have now, I actually last year did not put plastic up around my aviary, but I do have my shed is insulated and it's regulated by thermostats, and I've got two heaters in there. And if it gets really cold, I'll just close my windows that lead out into the aviary so I can kind of enclose that. I did love that aspect, Jay, because then if we had a fairly decent mid temperatures in throughout the winter, I'd let the birds out and they actually thoroughly enjoyed it, and they can still get sunlight throughout the wintertime. And then I can still view them without having to strain through the plastic. So I really love that. For me, the first thing is temperature swings. I already right now, I don't have any plastic up, right? We're not fully into winter right now, but we're in that change where our temperatures are getting colder every day, and I already have a heater outside of my shed. Now I also have some babies in the nest still inside my shed. So I have a heater out there, and for the last 2 weeks I've turned it on every night because we're getting down into the 50s, and it still keeps the bird room warm enough that right now my Goulians are not sitting on their chicks because they're old enough that they're not in the nest anymore. The parents aren't, and the heater's still keeping it warm enough at night to keep them safe, and they're not going to get chilled and die. But that's the first thing I think of winter prep is heat, temperature. And in the Utah area, you get some crazy major temperature fluctuations. So wherever you're at, when you're in that transition period, whether it's from winter to spring or fall to winter, keep an eye out, look at your weather patterns daily in case you get some crazy cold fronts that just swing through in a 24-hour period and drop your temperatures by 10 to 20 degrees, which is a lot, especially for a lot of the Australian species and the African species that are not as cold hardy as they could be or should be, and those temperature swings will hit them just like that. And I've noticed in the past, my females are the ones that get impacted the most every time.
Yep.
It's just crazy, like how much more fragile the females are in most of the species than the males are, and so that heater, keeping that temperature up to par and managing those temperature fluctuations is super important in maintaining that health. Once you swing down into the really cold temps and it's consistently cold, it's actually easier to maintain with the birds. But when you're in that transition period and it's going from hot to cold, several days at a time, that it can really throw the birds off as far as just regulating their bodies and trying to get them out of breeding condition, et cetera, things like that, that it can really affect them.
Yeah, I think the exact same thing. So, acclimating, I I used to let the birds go down to 50. I don't do that anymore. I find that especially your African species and your Gouldians, because Gouldians are a hard feather bird, no down.
Mm-hmm.
When you get below 60, you'll start to lose birds. They'll start to drop. You'll find them dead on the ground or dead in a, you know, kind of wedged in a corner. It's bad. So
Yeah.
I when I see the temperatures, like I talked about last episode, this week we're going to get down into the 60s. So even below 60, I don't let them go, but down into the 60, we got a little cold front that's going to push through, and then we'll be back in the 70s at night. So I'm not going to wrap the aviary yet, but I will put a heater out there. And the birds on their own can figure out, okay, it's warmer over here. I'll stay here where it's warm if they're cold.
Yeah,
Some like your canaries could go down to the 30s, no problem. They don't give a rip.
yeah,
They're a little bit bigger. They're from a little bit colder climate. Your borks, your quail, your
my
button quail are good below freezing.
yeah, my
Um,
all of them play in the snow out in the aviary when it
right.
snows. It's really fun to watch.
So they don't care, but the Africans, your smaller finches that just can't retain the body heat like the bigger birds can, they'll start to have problems. And I agree with you. The a stable colder temperature is better than the swing. When I see
Yeah,
a swing, and I'm starting to get into that too. Right now I'm 80, 85, 87 during the day and like 70, 71 at night. So that's about a 15-degree swing. When I see a 20-degree plus swing, that makes me nervous.
yeah,
I don't like it. So I mean, what I try to do in the winter is I try to keep the inside part of the shed at in the 80s, 78, 80, and I try to keep the outside part all wrapped above
yeah,
60.
yeah.
Um, and usually I find if I do that, the birds definitely slow down. You don't see the breeding behavior and everything, but they'll stay alive,
Yeah.
which, this part of the year that you're just trying to get them into that molt and then ramp them back up. So that's what I'm going for.
It's crazy.
Besides, go ahead.
Keep Yeah, you're right. I'm going to change the topic for a minute, so keep going.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, besides temperature, wrap in the cage, what else do you do?
Okay. Real quick, I remember growing up in our aviary. I mean, we'd have plastic out there. We'd put a little small red infrared heat lamp, and I remember coming out and like their water bowl is frozen solid. I mean, that's how cold it's still getting at night. I don't know how we didn't have more birds die, but I think it's just kind of to your point, Jay. They acclimatized to it, right?
Mhm.
And we mostly had zebra finches and parakeet, like budgie parakeets and lovebirds, that are a little bit more cold hardy than your Gouldian finches and whatnot. But yeah, I always remember that. I remember like dumping out the water bowl and just this big slab of ice hits the ground, and filling it back up. All the joys. Life seemed to be a little bit more simpler
Mhm.
back then, but. Um, so another thing that comes to mind, Jay, and you know, you're prepping for winter. You've got your cage wrapped in plastic, and your shed is kind of buttoned up as best as you can to keep as much of the cold out as you possibly can. My next biggest thing is maintaining a healthy air climate because it can get really dusty really fast because
Because you
now
closed
everything's
everything in.
Yep, now everything's enclosed. Your birds are molting, and they don't have that same airflow as what we have in the summertime, and it can lead to quite a bit of like respiratory issues for your birds, and for humans too. Let's be honest. And so, um, I know Jay, you've got an air purifier that you've kicked through. I've
Hmm.
toyed with a couple different options, but that's another big thing for me is I have found myself having to clean my cages more often in the wintertime just to maintain the dust control, all the feathers that are being molted out. And the birds go through more seed, right? Because it's cooler temperatures, they're eating more seed to maintain, some of that their own body temperatures and regulate
Hmm.
themselves there. So there's a little bit more of a seed mess there. And so cleaning regularly and more frequently than what I would in the summertime to maintain, a healthy air control and a healthy ground as far as, feathers and dust and things like that happen. So uh, that's been a really big thing in the middle of winter as well.
Yeah, all those things for sure. I mean, I do have an air filter that helps a lot. It just is messier. I clean another big thing, and this seems counterintuitive. I still allow my birds to bathe, and they will bathe
Yeah.
even when they're
Hmm.
cold.
Yep.
And the reason they bathe is to remove that a lot of that feather dust, especially when birds are molting. They need to bathe a lot to help the new feathers grow in and be able to come out of the sheath and all those things. So don't think, oh, it's too cold for my birds to have bathing water. They can figure out on their own. What
Right.
I usually see is they know when the hottest part of the day is going to be. So like 1-ish in the afternoon, they
Hmm.
will. That's when they'll bathe. But for birds to be able to stay warm, seems counterintuitive. They need to be able to bathe, even if the water is colder than you. You know, you stick your finger and you're like, oh, I wouldn't take a bath in that. They might because they need to be able to keep their feathers in good condition,
Yeah.
especially if they're molting, to stay warm.
Yep. And you've got your cockatiels, budgies, zebra finches, even your borks, they have a lot more feather dust and dander than a lot of your other
Hmm.
species, and so it helps with that too, right? It helps maintain healthy feathers, helps new feathers to come in, helps control dust, but then it also helps them to regulate their body temperature. So baths are still very much important um, for your birds throughout the wintertime. And if you have birds inside your house, I would say all of those still pertain. Just make sure they have a bowl that they can bathe in. Make sure that they're, by an area that's well ventilated, and you're going to be vacuuming up a bunch more feathers for a few months in the wintertime than you would in the summertime. And so, really, the scenarios, what you would do within those two different scenarios shouldn't change. It should be the same care for your birds, whether you're in a house or out in a big shed like Jay and I.
Yeah, and besides, I mean, we talked a lot about it last episode too, but besides lack of egg food and insects, different lighting, and then obviously temperature, the rest of the care should stay the same. Birds still need to have seed available all the time. They still need water. They definitely need calcium sources. A good, if you're looking for like a good all around supplement, especially for molting, Hari makes Prime is a good one. There's some
Hmm.
other good ones out there, but
There's a
Prime is
feather
what I
fast that
use.
I've used, which is good.
Yeah. And then I also do powdered kelp.
Hmm.
And then I provide salt licks, which is another source of iodine, which are big. Those are big elements that birds need for feather growth. So in the winter, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
getting them through the winter and providing the supplements, the nutrition, everything that they need to again be ready post molt to start ramping up for breeding condition.
Yeah. And I think also, Jay, in there, when I'm first coming into winter prep, I do a huge overhaul of the whole aviary shed. That's where I do a major deep clean. It's kind of the wrap up of the breeding season, but then to also prepare them for the winter season and kind of more of an enclosed space, right, to keep them warm. So I do a huge clean out. I clean out all the nest boxes. I replace branches and perches. Sometimes I'll repaint things, try to disinfect as much as I can. And then, like you said, Jay, throughout the winter, I'm focused on certain different like nutrients, supplements, and or medications, preventative medications, scats, things like that to really bring your birds back into a top-notch healthy condition so that you can bring them back up into breeding condition later in the road. And so, yeah, a lot of preventative medications are given throughout the winter time to the birds to help them be strong and ready for breeding condition when it comes spring.
That was the next thing I was going to bring up. So, prophylactic preventative medication. I have 2 rounds of those that I do. So, right after breeding season, I'll do scat and I'll deworm. And
Hmm.
then, so kind of at the beginning of winter. Now, right at the end of winter, I'll do Ronnie Vet for canker. And if I had coccidiosis concerns, I would do that then too. I prefer to do medication outside. There's certain like Ronnie Vet for is fine to use during the breeding season, and in fact, if you have like societies you're using as fosters, you want to do it during the breeding season. But
Yeah.
I try to do all my medications in that off period It's less stressful for the birds. It's a little easier, and then I'm able to, again, yeah, have them ready. So that's a time when I try to do those things, and then I also, it's actually the one thing I get excited about, and my birthday's here towards the end of the month, so it's kind of a birthday present to myself. As soon as breeding's over, pretty much right away, that's the time for me to rescape the aviary. So I think I've
Yeah.
mentioned it in a previous
Yeah.
episode. I've got like a big pile of branches sitting in my garage. They are ready to go. I've gotten a bunch of new fake greenery, so I'll get rid of all the old fake leaves, all the branches that have been pooped on and chewed on, and all that stuff. So that's all going to go, which that day's always fun for me because the birds are like, "What the heck?" Because they invariably, I take the branches out one by one by one, and by the end, there's
Uh-huh.
one branch with 100 birds on it.
Yeah.
Um, I get some cool pictures and videos. Then it's like there's everybody. Um, and then I also, while I'm doing the medication and stuff, like scat, you got to catch every bird and look at them and put scat on them. So that, and you
Hmm.
got to do it twice, by the way, which we've talked about this before, but scat is 2 treatments, exactly 21 days, which is
21.
3 weeks apart
Yep.
to catch the full life cycle of the mite. So the first treatment kills all the adult mites. However, they may have already laid eggs. Those eggs hatch 21 days, and then they get killed immediately by the second round of scat, and then you're done with the air sac mites. So that's the goal. But that's also a great time to inspect all your birds, right?
Yep.
So you might not have gotten an up close look. So any nail trimming that needs to occur,
Beak
that's I'll
trimming.
beak trimming, feather cysts, things like that. You can check their breasts, how healthy are they, how much weight, inspect around their eyes. That's a really good time if you got to handle your bird anyway, which you should kind of with the passerines, the finches, you want to do that to a minimum. That's a really good chance to do it because you kind
Yeah.
of have to anyway. And then the other thing I'm doing right now towards the end of this breeding season, and I'm working on it, I'm going through my last rounds of babies. This is a great time to say, okay, take stock of who am I going to move on? Who am I going to keep? What new birds do I need? And sort of work all that so that I can get those birds in now, get them through quarantine, get them in the aviary, and have them be able to sync up, hopefully, with everybody that's already here so I can move
Yep.
everybody into breeding condition at the same time,
Yeah.
which new birds
One.
is always fun.
Yeah. One. And I agree to everything you just said, Jay. I think those are best practices. Um, Probably the one other thing that I do during the wintertime, I know some people don't like it that I do it, but I've found that it's been beneficial. I do separate my males and females in the wintertime, and I have them in my aviary, and my flights inside my shed are divided. So for the most part, I put males on one side, females on the other side, and that really helps to give them a true resting period. They don't have males pressuring them in with singing, etc. They're all kind of molting, doing their own thing. And then it almost kind of excites them a little bit more coming into breeding condition because they are separated, but they can still see each other, sing to each other, talk to each other. It almost kind of brings that excitement up just another notch because it's like they want what they can't have, right? And if they're not in the same
Mm.
cage together, they want it more. But in the wintertime, that has helped and been something really successful for me. I know, again, there are some people that don't like that. They don't like the idea of splitting up pairs that have mated for life and things like that. And I have good records. I know who's paired up and who hasn't. But there are times that, I want specific colors or specific genetics, and they get paired up with someone else that next year, to try and improve my breeding lines and size and color, etc. And so sometimes those are decisions and options that have to be made in the wintertime and who I'm going to pair them back up with in the springtime. So
And I'll say this, Chris's aviary is bigger than mine. I don't do that because I don't have the ability to do that. If I had Chris's setup, I would do that. For all those same reasons. I think it's good husbandry. I wish I could do it. I eventually plan to move at some point and have a new aviary, which would be bigger, and I plan to have it be divided like that, even potentially more than just two. But if I could do it, I would. So if you're in a situation, if you have a split aviary like Chris does, or you're building an aviary, I would consider building a split aviary. I think that is good practice. And your aviaries, let's clarify that too. They share a combined mesh wall, so
Yeah.
everybody can still see each other. It's not they
Right.
just can't harass each other. But it's not like if you're splitting up a pair,
Yeah.
they don't see each other for six
And
months. They're just on the other side of the fence.
right. And I mostly do it for the benefit of the females.
Hmm.
They in the animal kingdom, the females they get the crap, and birds are no exception. And so it really is for the females to let them truly rest. They don't have any other birds harassing them. They can do their molts. They can not have to worry about being pressured into laying eggs or, breed out of season, things like that. So it really is for their benefit. And from what I've seen in my experience, I have rarely seen birds that are like trying to get to each other through the wires during the resting period, because they really are resting and molting, and they're just kind of as low key as they possibly can. Now, when we're coming back up into springtime and they're wanting to breed, then they are, and that's usually when I'm choosing my pairs. But in the true winter season, they seem to be happier and enjoy that, and they still get along very well. They don't seem like they're depressed or missing their mate or anything like that. And it's not to cruelly separate them. It really is to give them a true resting period, and allow them to recover from the breeding season, because the females get the brunt of it all. They lay the eggs, they raise the chicks for the most part, and then they do it all over again, three clutches in a row, until I say no more. And it takes a big toll on their bodies.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever been a teenage boy, or you've been around teenage boys, you know how knuckleheaded they can be. So yeah, and I mean, birds, they don't have the not that they're not smart, they're plenty smart, but they don't have the higher kind of moral. The boys don't necessarily know when to say no, especially in, some of your paired finches, your doves, things like that.
Yeah,
So giving everybody a break, if you're able to, in some form or fashion, is pretty ideal.
yeah, I agree.
Mhm. All right. I think that's winter prep. If they have a question, Chris, if they have a question for me, where can they find me? We'll do the quiz
Oh,
again.
I like the throwing it around. Oh, geez. Well, it's the Javiary or the underscore Javiary in some of your platforms. Let's see. You've got Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Do you do TikTok? I don't think you do TikTok, do you?
No,
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 you got you.
not giving my information to the Chinese government.
You've got Threads, which you don't like. What am I missing? There's one more I'm missing.
Reddit, Reddit.
Reddit. There you go. You got Reddit. So, and Jay is really quick and very uh, available, from my experience. On if you're reaching out to him and asking him questions, he can either get you the answer or get you to the person that can get you the answer pretty darn quick. So, definitely check him out there on his platforms. He's a great resource to have, and has a lot of platforms that you can reach out to him on. So,
Thank you. That's very
uh,
nice. Yeah, so
yeah,
if you're looking for Chris, he is Bird Nerd on everything except Instagram. He's Bird Nerd 4, but he's on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Instagram is the best place to reach him if you have trouble
yeah,
reaching him. He has more of an office job than I do, so sometimes he's a little more
yeah,
difficult to reach. But if you can't get him and you can get me, I'll get him for you and we'll figure it all out.
yeah. Sounds good. Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, New Zealand. We appreciate y'all.
Yes.
Use code
Thank you.
BirdBrains, 10% off, and we will see y'all in the next one.
See you guys.